The number of Americans now receiving unemployment benefits is now at its highest level since the COVID-19 pandemic. Labor Department data shows just shy of 2 million people getting those jobless checks. But President Trump is still denying that last week's bad jobs numbers were accurate. So to bolster his point, he brought an economist from the Conservative Heritage Foundation into the Oval Office with lots of charts to talk numbers. What the Washington Post calls an 8-minute pep rally on Trump's economy versus that of his predecessor, Joe Biden. But it is important to note that those charts are based on unpublished, unverified data. Joining us now, chief strategist for the Bush-Cheney 2004 presidential campaign and senior MSNBC political analyst Matthew Dowd, and Axios' senior markets reporter Madison Mills is here. So what is, Madison, the state of the jobs market right now? Are there cracks in the labor market?
We're absolutely starting to see cracks in the labor market, and it's really a low hire, low fire environment. All of these companies dealing with these tariff updates that keep coming in, keep changing, and that's a lot of uncertainty, right? Plus, they're coming off the back of the pandemic when there was that severe labor shortage, so they don't want to be too quick to have a lot of layoffs, but they're not necessarily hiring people either. They want to kind of keep their capital expenditures as low as they possibly can at the moment, and a little bit more of a wait-and-see environment as they wait to see what these tariffs look like, as they wait to see what the economy starts to look like. So if you have a job right now, you're probably feeling okay about the labor market, but if you don't, it's a very difficult time.
And what Donald Trump wants you to believe is that all those economists, the majority of economists aren't right, but this guy is. Who is the guy that he brought in there? And can those numbers even be fact-checked?
Well, as you very smartly mentioned in your intro, it's Census Bureau data that we do not have access to, so it would be impossible to verify the data without having the opportunity to look at it. What I can tell you is that the sources who I speak with, economists on both sides of the aisle, say it's incredibly critical to have an independent, nonpartisan Bureau of Labor Statistics, because the jobs data every month, that's the thing that we are all watching all the time. It moves markets across the globe, not just here in the United States. It's a key picture of the health of our economy. So having that ability to verify that data independently it's hard to overstate how critical that is.
Yeah, and what we can say is that the Labor Department data, i.e., this is how many checks we sent out, unemployment checks, is the number, right? So, Matthew, independent economic analysts may look at this and say, this isn't rooted in reality. This is Donald Trump. But does he rely on his reputation? I mean, look, a lot of people voted for this successful billionaire businessman. So maybe he figures they'll believe him over the experts when it comes to the economy.
Well, yeah, that's what Donald Trump wants you to believe. He wants to say, are you going to believe me or your lying eyes and ears that see all the data? And how you feel, actually, as Madison knows, when you look at how people feel about the economy today, they're negative on the economy. They're negative on inflation. They're negative. They have negative confidence in that the economy is growing in this. And so it's not only a data problem that Donald Trump had, it's the majority of the American public and how they feel about their own finances and the economy in general in this. And that's the problem that Donald Trump has. His base will likely stay with him. They seem to believe, whatever he says, whatever it is about. I think they're sort of fact insensitive in this. And so that won't matter to them. But the people that decided the election in 2024 based their primary reason why they decided the election was they were upset about the economy, upset about inflation. Those people today who swung to Donald Trump are more upset today about the economy and the inflation. And so Donald Trump can hold up as many charts as he wants, but when you're speaking past people's feelings, how they feel about the economy, you're in a big problem.
You've taught me a new diplomatic phrase, fact insensitive. But let me ask you about just strategy, right? Because there are lots of things that this administration has wanted or said it wanted to put in the rear view. Donald Trump wanted Epstein in the rear view, but he kept talking about it. You would think that if you have bad jobs numbers that are then bolstered by what we saw from the Labor Department about unemployment checks going out, that would be something you would want to put in the rear view mirror. But they keep he keeps talking about it. Can you think of a political strategic reason to keep bad news stories alive? And also, by the way, to keep comparing himself to Joe Biden?
Well, I mean, that's the problem generally among the voters is you don't want to do that, especially among these swing voters who will decide the 2026 midterm elections in this, who are already disapprove of Donald Trump generally and disapprove him on all the big issues, on the economy, on inflation, on Epstein, on immigration. They disapprove of him on all those issues. Donald Trump, this is not abnormal to Donald Trump. Donald Trump seems to have his own reality bubble that he thinks no matter what he says, it will become true by virtue of him saying it. He's got some semblance of evidence among his base that continues to be true. There are slight cracks in it because of Epstein, and I'm interested going forward is those cracks that the Epstein problem and not being transparent and not releasing files and all of that, will that crack people to start looking more objectively at other data like the economy in this? For his base, Donald Trump seems to be able to say and do anything, and those voters believe it. But 65% of the country is not his base, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and there does seem to be, I think, one successful strategy that we're witnessing, whether you're Tim Cook of Apple giving Trump some glass and gold that looks like an award, or economist Stephen Moore coming up with numbers to fit Trump's narrative. It earned you a trip to the Oval Office. It earned you the president's praise. So I guess it helps them. It certainly helped Tim Cook, right? Tim Cook looks like he's okay with tariffs right now. But big picture, does any of this help the Republican Party, which knows it has a challenging set of midterms coming up?
No, it doesn't help him at all. I mean, I think that the problem of what's Donald Trump's presidency so far in this second term of his presidency is almost every step along the way has changed the minds of independent swing voters against him. That's one huge problem. And it's begun to demotivate Republicans on the other side. And so when you have those two parts entering a campaign where you've moved swing voters against you, which Donald Trump has done and his policies have done for the last 6 months, and you're demotivating parts of your base, that is a perfect storm of a problem in a midterm, which is why in your lead in the segment leading in about why something is happening in Texas on redistricting, which I know we'll talk about, which is why they're doing that, because they know the broad environment and Donald Trump's numbers in general are really bad. So they're trying to jerry-rig the system in a way that they can try to overcome that. They know, Republicans know deep in their hearts, the situation they have today is really bad for the midterm.
The fact-sensitive Madison Mills, thank you. Come back. It's great having you here on set. Matthew, stay close.